Oh, can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Any discussion items on those minutes from either of you? Okay, all in favor? 500. Okay, next is approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Warren, second from Bill. Any discussion of tonight's agenda? Okay, all in favor of approving? 1, 2, 3, 4, 500. All right, very good. We are underway. Okay, next up we have resident remarks, but we're going to do things a little bit differently. Because we have a public hearing scheduled for the architecture guidelines under old business. Anyone here to make remarks about the architecture guidelines will have the same 3 minutes you would have during resident remarks, but we're going to hold them till that part of the agenda. So if there's anyone here to make remarks about anything other than the architecture guidelines, anyone online here to, okay, Ashley, go ahead.
Hey there. Can you hear me? Hi. Hey, Jonathan. So I wanted to let you know, and Paul, good to see you on, because I did get an update from the email you sent. The update from Howard County Police Department, commercial motor vehicles that were parked on Blue Coat Lane and the Flagger Force truck on Kilimanjaro were cited over the weekend as violating the 6-hour policy. So they are actively going to continue monitoring the areas, and we will continue to get updates. They should give us a full report once we get to about the 30 to 60 day range, just to keep track of it to see. And then that way they'll know how to continue to enforce it. But I just wanted to let you all know that.
Thank you so much, Ashley.
You're
I have
welcome.
one follow-up. Because I think the original C-Click fix on that Flagger Force mistakenly thought it was a county vehicle. Do we need to do another one to get the lawn damage it caused repaired? Or is that something that you can just grab the original and say, hey, this is the, because what that vehicle did was it caused ruts in the grass along Kilimanjaro right there at Matador.
Okay. Let me check in and find out, and then I'll circle back around to you.
Okay, sounds good. If you need me to, I can put in one of those lawn damage tickets, but I think
That'll
usually
probably be the route we take, but I'll double check just to make sure.
I was gonna say, I think the problem with the lawn damage is it's meant for like when the county damages private property, and this is damage to county property. Because it's the street side of the it's the grass on the street side of the sidewalk, not on the side belonging to the townhomes.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll make that note and I'll check in with Adrian and then circle back with you.
Okay, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Just to keep everyone else in the loop. So we had a situation where Paul and I were simultaneously reporting basically parking of commercial vehicles in residential zones. And I wasn't getting any response. Paul actually was able to get the police out and they said, oh no, it only applies to CDL vehicles. And I said, well, no, it doesn't. You know, based on what the county code says, no, it doesn't. And based on past experience. So we got Adrian involved and Ashley, Adrian from Dr. Ball's office and Ashley from Dr. Jones's office involved. And it turns out we were right. It's any commercial vehicle, not just vehicles requiring a CDL. So the traffic division, did some re-education and has acted on it, which is a good thing. So for future reference, should any complaints mistakenly come in as covenant complaints when it's really public roads, it's any commercial vehicle, not just those requiring a CDL.
And that's probably people.
Yes, yes.
So it's nice to know that now.
Yes. So if anyone comes back and says otherwise, I'll forward you the email traffic because I don't know if you were on all the email exchanges so that you have it. Okay.
Some, but yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyone else for non-architecture guideline remarks? All right, then we are going to move right on to new business, which is an update on the Oakland Mills Play Area Pilot Program from a team of CA representatives here. I'm not sure who the spokesperson is, so I'll just say the team is here. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, Looking that for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Jonathan, who is it? Who is there? Can you tell us? Since we can't see.
Oh, yeah, is the camera not working?
No, I can see, but it's so tiny because the screen's.
Oh, yeah, oh, no, well, yeah, we'll do yeah, we're just getting everyone situated, we'll do introductions.
Okay. Cool, cool.
So first, thank you for having us. My name is Jason Heath. I'm with Columbia Association Capital Improvements. We're here tonight to present the play area pilot program. I want to say first, thanks to everyone involved. It was a work group that included staff, residents. Mr. Bill McCormick here, who was instrumental in keeping us moving in the right direction. So yeah, I will turn it over to Casey to start it off.
All right. So first things first, I'm going to take us kind of through the presentation, what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to take you through a brief historical background on the play area pilot program, how it got set up, how we started it all off. Then I'm going to walk through a survey that we implemented that hopefully you guys all saw throughout the community and the key takeaways that we had from that survey. That'll lead into Jason, who will talk through some criteria that we created as a result of that survey. He'll walk you through isochrone analysis and a brief explanation on what isochrones are, if people don't know, with some project specific examples. And then we'll end it with an example of implementation of that criteria with a cost analysis. So to start things off, this all started with a board resolution. Basically said, working with One Village, which is Oakland Mills, CA will create and implement a pilot program for reimagining CA's play areas, also known as tot lots. The aim is to identify options to replace redundant tot lots with substantially overlapping service areas and reimagine them as an improved community amenity. CA staff would then make it through this process, come up with some lessons learned, take those lessons learned to inform a play area program and provide those recommendations in the end to the CA board. Just a bit of historical perspective as far as tot lots are concerned. Tot lots in Columbia were originally introduced in 1967. And they were intended to supplement natural amenities of open space and provide areas with concentrated play, and they were geared mostly towards ages 2 to 5. Installation of special tot lots typically were reserved for neighborhood centers, and those started in 1996 with Stevens Forest. Those concentrated more on ADA accessible play equipment and equipment geared towards an older age group, and also considered play activities for preschoolers. Tot lots have served as an important role in attracting young families to Columbia. We heard a lot about this in the survey, so we can touch on that a little bit later. And they continue to serve an important role today. Strategic considerations going into this pilot program before we implemented the survey and heard back from residents for travel time, walking distance, environmental impact, including things like proximity to streams, tree removal, and material life cycle, safety, including sight lines, visibility to others, and non-park-like activities, ADA accessibility, maintenance, equipment access, size and topography, the age of tot lot service areas. We started out thinking that a 10-minute walk was a pretty appropriate amount of time for people to make it to a tot lot. We weren't sure about that, so we definitely concentrated on that when we went into the survey results. And then also just the idea of parking. So leading into the survey process, we actually brought in an outside expert called the Moray Group, and they helped us draft, create, and launch a survey and put it out into the community. The main form of promotion for that survey that we used was signage, and that's the picture that you see down at the bottom and the picture that was in the very beginning. We put this sign at every tot lot throughout Columbia and also just in some high visibility areas, and it had a QR code to take you to the survey. We also leveraged some digital signage inside a lot of our facilities. We did some posts on social media and included it in our email communications. The survey was really successful. We got over 1,700 submissions and they were from a wide range all over Columbia. I think 97% of the people that responded to the survey were Columbia residents. And I know it's small for everybody, but this is a breakdown of village participation. So you can see it's a pretty even spread. 74% of respondents expressed that there was just the right amount of play areas in Columbia, which basically mirrors 73% of people who said that there was just the right amount of play areas in their specific village. Overall satisfaction with play areas was really high, 75% rated excellent or good. Cleanliness, it says 92 there, but it's actually 79. I'm not sure what that typo was. Still good though. Safety was 83%, equipment quality 61%. Those were all key factors influencing satisfaction with their current conditions. Respondents expressed a preference for expanding play areas with climbing structures, expanded forts, and swings. And a lot of the open-ended questions also included accommodations for adults, like more seating areas, chess tables, picnic tables, spaces for dogs, things along those lines. While current play areas are geared towards ages 3 to 5, as you can see here, people express a big desire to spread that out a little more and gear play areas more towards a broader age range. %21 of respondents answered that they wouldn't have a problem visiting another play area if their most frequented play area was replaced with another amenity. 39% of respondents said they would visit another play area, but they wouldn't necessarily be happy about it. And the remaining 40% of respondents either said, no, I don't want to, or kind of declined to answer. And then this is getting into walking distance, as I referenced before. The average walk for most people is 6.8 minutes to their most frequented play area. But people answered on average that a too far walk for them would be 18 and a half minutes. So we kind of figured our 10-minute thought in the beginning was pretty spot on. So in summary for the survey, we had an overwhelming amount of Columbia residents prioritize location of play areas when choosing which play area to visit. Open-ended responses showed a huge resistance to any sort of reduction in play areas. And they also showed a huge desire to diversify the age range served. It kind of confirmed for us that a 10-minute walk was acceptable for most respondents. And a lot of respondents expressed interest in expanding play structures to serve a more diverse age range, adding climbing structures, seating areas, things along those lines. On top of this, a lot of people said that the play areas were like the main reason that they moved to Columbia. So people are really, really passionate about this subject. So with all of that in mind, I'm going to toss it over to Jason, who will kind of take these results and bring them into like real life examples.
Thank you, Casey. So based on the results of the survey, the play area worker drafted a criteria for staff to implement when reimagining play areas. The main goals of the criteria are safety, opportunity for enhancement, improvement, sustainability, fairness, and feasibility. A play area is identified as an opportunity for reimagination during annual safety inspections and will be looked at strategically as part of a cluster. I'll explain what cluster is here in a few minutes. This is a flow chart that's going to go through the critical path of the criteria implementation. So first, we would, complete an annual inspection, and that would dictate what play areas need to be reimagined. So if a play area failed its safety inspection, that would get priority. We would then identify the cluster the play area fits into. As part of that, we would create the isochrone for the play areas within the cluster. We would develop a replacement strategy for the cluster. So that entails, we would look at the cluster, so say it's 3 play areas. We would look at that as a whole and try and diversify. So maybe one play area is 2 to 5, the other one's 5 to 12, and the third has a climbing structure instead of a fourth. We would then design the play area to be replaced. And then we would present that design to the village board. So when we present that design, we would identify what we thought that cluster should be. So we would do a comprehensive design of the one we're actually replacing, but we would also document what the other 2 are part of that cluster. So when it comes time to replace those, we know what that cluster is going to be. After hearing from the village board, we would implement reasonable suggestions into the design. And then staff would procure the equipment, create the replacement schedule. We would notify the village manager. That's typically, we aim to notify like 4 weeks in advance. If we're using an outside contractor, sometimes that can't be accommodated, but we try at a bare minimum 2 weeks notification. And then we would build the new play area. So this is the example. So us implementing this, the work group decided to identify the cluster in Oakland Mills with play area 12, 13, and 14. And for the purpose of this part of the presentation, we're going to assume that OM13 did not pass its annual safety inspection. So clusters are identified by the use of isochrones, which use a 10-minute walking radius. So we would have our GIS specialists locate those 3 play areas. He would do an isochrone with a 10-minute walking radius. And that the walking radius uses CA pathway sidewalks, and it avoids major road crossings. And the following cluster is the example. So OM14 is the light blue on the left. OM13 is the brownish color. OM12 is the purple. And the reddish and kind of grayish color you see in the center represents the overlap or duplication of services. So this is OM13, the isochrone, and this is where we apply the analytics. So we identify how many housing units there are within that 10-minute walk area, which gives us a total estimated population. And then from that, we can determine the potential use for children. So all this comes from the Howard County Census, and our GIS guy has formulas to calculate all this. Again, another one for OM12. As you can see, this one serves quite a bit of children, 432. And this is OM14. So for the example, OM13 failed. So we would look at the whole cluster as a whole. Staff would go out, walk the sites. We would contact our landscape architect and get his opinion and feedback. And as part of the work group, I should mention, we did create a criteria for a minimum standard for a playground. So OM13 would not meet that minimum standard. So that being said, we chose to, we would present to the village board replacing this play area with a seating area and reforesting around the stream. And then OM12, we would recommend eventually turning that into the play area with the climbing structure. You can see in the lower right-hand corner, that's an example. We show later on the same unit in the color patterns that we typically use in open space. So this is OM14. This would be example we would bring to the village board to replace this. This has the 5 to 12 unit, some shade incorporated into it. As you can see, that this has a lot higher platforms than the typical play areas you see out in open space today. So it's geared to a older range of children. Again, this is the same piece of play equipment, but in the color scheme that CA would typically use. And again, same with the clocking structure. And a cost analysis. So right now, we're on a 20-year replacement cycle, which requires 8 play areas be replaced per year. Right now, we spend around $92,000 in each play area. So for FY25, we requested a Category 2 capital budget for play area replacements of $736,000. Moving forward, replacements will include pre-manufactured equipment with a longer lifespan, moving towards a 25-year replacement cycle, which will require 7 play areas to be replaced per year. With us implementing the play equipment that's geared towards the larger or older age range, the price of equipment's a lot more expensive. So we anticipate the cost going from 92 to about 105 on average per play area. But if we did 7 a year instead of 8 per year, it keeps our annual budget about the same. So we think this criteria in the program that that the work group put together, it can be implemented. It's a good criteria. That's it. So we're going to open up to questions. We would like everyone's feedback. Eventually, we're planning on presenting this to the Columbia Association Board. We're hoping to get on their agenda in April.
So you can see the hands up.
Rebecca?
So, oh no, hold on. So many questions. Thank you so much for all your work on this. I originally really wanted to be more a part of it. I'm glad Bill's been there to hold the flag. But obviously I feel very strongly about this stuff. So a couple quick questions. Like which when you say that you're gonna when a play area fails the safety test or whatever, and then you look at the isochrone to figure out which other play areas are around, and kind of use the example of you might do one for 2 to 5 year olds, 1 to 6 to 8 year olds, one for the older crew. What are have you considered or put together a list, or will you put together a list of the full options for those? Because originally I really was hoping to see something more for, older adults to come and sit, like the table example you showed, and maybe something that would have more mixed use, things like that. Like, so are you going to have a bunch of different options that you can then assign one of which to the different areas in the isochrone? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we identified some reasonable play equipment that we would recommend to our landscape architect. And, when we brought the design to the village boards, that's when people could have input on which play equipment they love.
But thinking beyond play equipment, did you only focus on just pre-manufactured play equipment?
Yeah, we took a look at quite a few different options. There's a company, Playground Specialist. They have concrete play equipment examples that mimic logs and boulders. Yeah, I mean, we're willing to look at anything really, as long as it's reasonable.
Yeah, like things beyond that, like porch swings that grandparents could sit on with their grandkids, or like the chess tables mentioned, or other stuff like that, that's not, you know, a playground equipment.
It's funny you bring up the porch swing. So I think later this month, one of our contractors is going to be installing 2 of those swings on the Lake Kittapah loop. So
Oh,
over
okay.
by we're going to be installing 2 swings. Where there's
Cool.
2 benches existing now, and then we're going to repurpose those benches further up the trail in between the river and the lake, going up towards the horseshoe boardwalk, the upper end. So
Oh, or like
It-
gym
it works.
equipment. We have a guy who uses the Thunder Hill Elementary School playground every morning for chin-ups, things like that, chin-up bars, like they have between Wild Lake and Kittamakundi.
And we've actually requested state funding to put another outdoor exercise area in Gateway, actually, so. We are definitely exploring all those options.
Okay, I guess that kind of covers my concerns now, just making sure that it's not being, the thoughts aren't being limited to just like for like, because honestly, the play equipment you just showed is not what I had envisioned, because it's very closed-ended in how kids can play on it, and it's very limiting to the age range that can play on it. So the whole idea of revisioning the tot lots, and I'm sorry for the noise in the background. That is my future tot lot user. Yeah, because I really envisioned something more open-ended, that a lot more kids not having one tot lot for one age, and then another tot lot for another age, but one tot lot that can satisfy lots of different ages in that one spot, if that makes sense.
So this presentation would have got really long if we would have included bullet point by bullet point for the criteria, but it was
Sure.
attached to this presentation. I would highly recommend to go through and read it. So one thing I didn't mention that I probably should have is, so most of our play areas that are existing are geared towards 2 to 5-year-olds. So that said, going forward, as we replace them, we would focus on the 5 to 12 and the climbing structures. So to make those clusters more, diverse and concentrated.
Cool. Well, I'll stay tuned as this develops. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
More questions from the board? Warren?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. How does how do you work with the boards? How does that process work? You give a presentation and then we have a week, 2 weeks, when we'll probably send, Rikita will send something out to our people, Oakland Mills, and see what the comments are and then come back to you. So do we have to the next board meeting to respond? How does that work?
As part of the criteria, we would get the design to the village manager at least 4 weeks before the village board meeting.
Okay.
And it would be up to the village board to get that out there and made public. And then when we come to present at that board meeting, we would take everybody's recommendations, and then, as long as they're reasonable, we would try and include them.
Okay, thanks. Is there, I heard a rumor that my kids love the sand. Are we gonna get rid of those? Get rid of that?
Yes.
Please. Oh, thank you. Sorry, Warren.
The kids love
I
that.
don't know how it was then, but now they're litter boxes.
He's correct. So in 2019, right before COVID, we posted cameras at quite a few play areas, signage and cameras. People were well aware of this. And they were trail cameras, so they took photos when there was movement. And we suspected, but we learned very quickly that the sandboxes, kids shouldn't really be playing in them. It's like he said, it's a litter box.
So sort of in that same vein, the tot lot near my house is, there's a lot of dog walkers. And they use that trash can. It's just full of dog feces all the time. I was wondering if that could be put, maybe we think about putting those somewhere away from.
Warren, I
Where's
think they did move that trash can at the bottom of the hill. I think they moved it on the other side of the bridge.
Did they?
Yeah, I thought it was because you asked, because you mentioned that before.
Maybe my wife did.
One of the immediate benefits of the survey is like the open-ended questions were like, I think it was like 40 pages of feedback. But one of the best things that came out of that survey was comments like that are like immediately actionable. That we can, and it will all be taken into account, like when reimagining any of those areas. Things like moving the trash cans, that was said very often.
Yeah. It's a common problem.
Mhm.
Well, thank you.
So thank you for the presentation. OM 13, no, 14, what's Gatsby Green? I know them by their 13 is Gatsby Green, right? Yeah, that's actually the closest one to my house, so I agree that that is. That doesn't need to be, just the way the path cuts through the land's not adequate. So my follow-up question, and this is beyond, beyond the scope of play areas, but through that whole stretch, right, that waterway runs beside it, which I know causes problems. We've had a lot of erosion issues along that whole waterway, not just where that play area is. So will any thought be put into as that play area is eventually taken out and that area is reforested, doing some other work to improve the I don't even know what needs to be done, but basically, improve the situation with that waterway so we don't have the erosion issues and then the washouts across the path because of the way the land is graded right now.
Yeah, so we wouldn't do any in-stream work. That opens up a whole can of
Mhm.
permitting and going through government agencies like MD. So that's part of the reason why we would recommend reforestation there.
Okay.
We would plant the stream bank, so as the water came up or as it eroded, hopefully those trees take root and bury themselves in before the erosion reaches them, and then the trees will help stabilize that bank.
Okay, yeah, because I know one of the issues we've had there, and I know some, neighbors have been upset by this, is CA's had to actually come in and take out trees because the waterway has undercut the root systems and they're not stable. So I was wondering how, I like the idea of the reforestation. I was just wondering, how you do it so that the trees can actually take instead of having to be taken out because the waterway ends up undercutting them.
Yeah, we would have our landscape architect and our arborist
Okay.
make, identify appropriate trees to plant.
Okay, great,
That are more resilient to stuff like that.
great, thank you.
That just,
Bill?
two things. One is that it was a great effort, CA and the work group team. We explored lots of options in terms of play equipment and got down to, well, how long does it last? What's the functionality of it? How often does it have to be replaced, et cetera, et cetera. We were looking at long-lasting, low-maintenance material to get the most bang for the CA residents' buck. And then the conversations between the work group, CA staff, a lot of the, say, conclusions are in the criteria, and that's associated with the presentation. That criteria has a lot of, what's the fruit of our efforts are in there. And reading that will give you a lot more background besides what we have here in the presentation. And I also want to thank CA staff. They were great to work with. There was a lot of feedback from the survey, which we discussed, and then the feedback from the work group. And CA staff listened all the way. It was a great time. We had a lot of fun. We did a lot of hard work. My personal opinion is this is a really good plan going forward. And I like the idea of the clusters and the big picture as opposed to calling it a tot lot. Now they're play areas and it's a bigger perspective. The clusters of 3, sometimes 4 play areas considered as a unit for that whole area, I think will take us into the next 20 years and take us kind of out of the last 50 into the next 20. So I personally want to thank all CA and the work group for a great effort. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are moving into our old business items now, and first up, scheduled for 30 minutes is the proposed architecture guidelines public comment hearing. So we do have some written comments that Brigida has distributed to the board. I know we also have 3 residents who are here in person. No, I'm sorry, one resident has signed up to speak in person. We may have a few online, so when the time comes, I will call on our resident who is sitting here in the room, and then call on anyone online in the order that you raise your hand in Zoom. And you'll each have 3 minutes to give public feedback, same as a resident speak out. Before we get started, I know Brigida, you had an opening, which includes a lot of thank yous because a lot of people have put a lot of hard work
Yes.
into these guidelines. I was starting something and then Brigida sent me this draft and I went, whoa, you're way ahead of where I was. You go ahead, go for it.
Yeah, so as Jonathan said, this has been a process. We started this in early fall. It was a little overdue. COVID kind of altered our timeline, and then me adjusting to being a new village manager. But thankfully, to a lot of wonderful people, we were able to get it done. So first and foremost, and one of them is here this evening, thank you to the Architectural Guidelines Revision Committee. For volunteering their free time to come in and really review the guidelines and give us their input, the OMCA Covenant team, and Jonathan Edelson as the AC chair, and the board as they've looked these over and provided their comments as well. So thank you for all the time that you put into them. As I said, it is a big undertaking and done approximately every 3 to 5 years. The last revision was in 2017. The purpose of the architectural guidelines are to provide guidance to help residents abide by the Oak Mills covenants and to help the OMCA covenant team enforce those covenants. The current process of revisions began in the fall of 2023 over a series of meetings with the committee. New laws and practices were taken into consideration along with the experience and knowledge of some of our RAC members and the OMCA covenant team. Over several months, the 2024 proposed OMCA architectural guidelines came to be. Today was the final day for submission of public comments. We would like to thank all of you who submitted those public comments during this time period. The public comment period is an important part of the process, and we have read and will take into consideration all comments that were submitted. Following tonight's meeting, the covenant team, the AC chair, and the village manager will review all comments and suggestions, and if appropriate, incorporate them into the draft proposed OMC architectural guidelines. The revised draft of the guidelines will be brought back to the board at the March 12th board meeting for their review and for a vote. If this revised draft is approved by the board, at that meeting, it is then sent to CA Legal for their review and comments. That, I've been told, takes approximately 2 to 3 weeks, depending on what else they have on their plate. But when they are finished reviewing, they do send their comments back to us. And then their comments will be reviewed by the covenant team, the AC chair, and the village manager, and incorporated into what will become the proposed final edition of the architectural guidelines. This final copy of the 2024 proposed architectural guidelines is brought to the board for review and vote. Upon approval of this final copy of the guidelines, the new guidelines, sorry for saying that word so many times, will take effect hopefully on May 1st, 2024, with the start of the new board and fiscal year. So that's kind of a breakdown of the process. And just to know that this is not an easy task. And I really appreciated all of the insight from everybody, those who review applications, those have to enforce the covenants, though, you know, the whole team, and it was really a great effort. So I want everybody to know who submitted comments and who is here this evening, that we really do appreciate you reviewing, and we certainly will take everything that you have to say into consideration.
Okay, and before we get to the comments, let me just add a couple of other things. First of all, for the purpose of scope tonight, my colleagues on the board, obviously, we've already, looked at drafts of the guidelines. We've already had our discussion of the guidelines in open meetings. So, our scope tonight will be, following up, on questions raised in the public comment, as folks speak to us or as folks raise things in their written comments. As Brigitte said, a lot of work among many people went into this. A lot of people with a lot of expertise worked on this, and it's much appreciated. And, one of the things we did, actually outside of board meetings was, am I still the acting architecture chair, whatever I am these days, it's been almost the whole year. I also had work sessions, with our covenant staff. So, Brigitte, Karina, Mike, actually, I think Carrie was there as well. I think everyone was there. Where we really, looked at things, we looked at all the written comments that had come in from the board, and, made sure that we, understood what we meant, where questions were raised or comments were raised, or revised things in response to, to the board's feedback and other feedback. So I actually sent Brigitte a note today, proposing that after this, we do another one of those work sessions, so that, we can get all the professionals plus me, looking once again at everything we gather, just to make sure that, where, potential issues were raised over, who might have jurisdiction that supersedes us, to make sure issues like that are resolved, to where issues that have already been raised in writing about, where on the scale of burden and whether it's crossing over to unreasonable, whether those are resolved, and we're basically treating, different types of projects, equally under our covenants and guidelines, and not doing anything that would be considered unreasonable, and of course, everything else we receive. So we will be having another one of those sessions. Brigitte wanted to have it as soon as tomorrow. Unfortunately, it cannot happen tomorrow or Thursday because I have a job. But it will happen soon. So, those are the immediate, next steps that will come out of this, in addition to what Brigitte talked about in the longer term, in terms of the board ultimately acting, and then CA doing legal review before we can hopefully put these into effect on May 1st. So with that, I'm going to get us started on our public comments. And in the room, we have Mr. Is it pronounced Pluge? Did I get it right? Correct me, please.
No, it's Dutch. It's not. It's unpronounceable in English.
It's unpronounceable.
Everybody says you can't pronounce it.
You know what? You might get an extra minute just for. All right, I'm going to start my timer here. And when you're ready to start, I will click go, and I will give you one of these when you're at the 1 minute warning, and then.
So I'm here as a representative of Yards Alive, which is the organization that tries to convert people away from yards, bluegrass to more natural settings. I'm also here as a 45-year career environmental scientist, 42-year resident of the Mills. And on top of that, I am the green team lead for the Oakland Mills Interface Center behind us on the hill, where I do this seems every day, but maybe it's not quite every day. So I have two major concerns. Yards Alive provided 4 pages of written testimony. There are 2 major issues that I feel that are really badly handled in this particular document, whether that's just oversight, whether it's a lack of understanding, whatever it is. First issue, stormwater. A lot of this does not take into account where stormwater will end up. Basically says diverted. Well, that's a bad idea, because diverting generally means it ends up in your neighbor's yard, which means that the neighbor will divert it in somebody else's yard, and it'll become a pissing contest right down the street of who eventually ends up with the lowest lot. So one of the things we do is do rain gardens, try to catch water before it runs off into the neighbor's yards. Obviously, can't catch everything, but it keeps most of the wet spots from occurring too often in the year. There will be an occasional wet spot. So stormwater issues, and this is a theme that's throughout our comments, is something you need to consider. Townhouses especially, diverting, you know, at a 90-degree diverter on the front of a townhouse will absolutely guarantee that the neighbor next door will have a water leak in their basement at some point during the year. So this needs to be done. You cannot divert it into county property just for the hell of it. So running a hose from your downspout to the county sidewalk doesn't work either, because then it freezes in the winter time. That's your liability, not the county's. So all those things need to be taken into account. They're not in it. Secondly, HB 2322 was established because when Oakland Mills residents filed suit, you are setting yourself up for another set of lawsuits for this particular topic, because you are not treating alternative landscaping in a reasonable fashion. You are asking for extra rules on alternative landscaping. For instance, you don't ban invasives, but you're gonna fuss about how a natural plant occurs. So you have to do both at the same time if you want to do that. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any board comments or follow-up questions in response to that testimony?
What's HB 22?
HB 322 is the state bill that basically said thou shalt not enforce unreasonable rules upon residents or trying to do native landscaping.
Sorry,
And rules beyond that apply to non-native landscaping. All the rules in here are only specifically written for non-native landscape, for native landscaping. Non-native landscaping is just sort of going, whatever you want to do is fine. And those two don't match. So that's this lawsuit waiting to happen from President.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Should I raise my hand?
Oh, Karina was just gonna comment.
yeah,
so
Dr.
then-
Karina, and then,
Yep,
yeah,
go
if you're
for it.
online, just put your hand up so I know you want to speak.
Yeah,
So I did review, I'm covenant advisor for property concerns, just so you know. And I did we thoroughly reviewed everybody's comments, specifically yours as well, the Yards Alive responses, and we are looking at, I think that the way that we're gonna look at rewording, because it's the way for landscaping and gardening. The rules and requirements are for any gardening, not just low impact. It's non-native, it's native, it's every type of garden that doesn't fall within our parameters as they stand. So it's not, but I can see how now, after reviewing it, that perhaps the wording does not. It's easily misinterpreted, or we have not been clear in how we worded it. So we are going to look at that.
My major concern was the basic fact, is you read the language, the way it's written right now, it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. And the last thing I want as a resident of this village is to basically sit there and let a rule go through that basically says we can get sued again and spend a couple $100,000.
I can assure you that we are very supportive of, and obviously understand Houston. We've gone over it a lot. I've talked legal about it prior to this even, because of my role in enforcement and understanding it. So it certainly is not the intention to try and skirt the House bill, or even skirt any ability for residents to be able to have low impact landscaping. We want to encourage it. We just need to do it evenly and equally, and based on the covenants as they stand. And as Brigitte said, CA Legal certainly would not let us put anything in the guidelines. That
Would be
would
the first time to slip through the cracks, you know, so.
yeah, no, I wouldn't be, this is definitely something that we've had many conversations with, so, you've been heard, we understand, and I do think that there will be rewording, and so that it's interpreted, it's not as easily misinterpreted as I now see that it, appears to have been. So
Yeah,
thank you for the feedback.
I was, when I did my little intro after Brigida, that's actually what I was alluding to. And I haven't, obviously, we haven't had the work session. I haven't had a chance to talk to Brigida or Karina about this, but my personal observation was, I think in our effort to encourage more environmentally friendly practices by, sort of pointing them out in the guidelines, it makes it look like we're placing additional restriction because we're not calling out the non-environmental. Yeah, but we actually wanted that. We actually wanted those practices featured in our guidelines to encourage people to think about those things. Now we just need to make sure that it's clear that, everything is going to be treated.
It just seems from everything that I read in there that whoever was involved, not casting names because I don't know the players. Somebody with stormwater experience needs to go over this and basically say, this is yes, no, maybe, because I read it as a stormwater person and I basically say, this is really bad. Because this is a constant problem. You want to see what happens when it doesn't happen. We can show you before and after pictures of the Open Hills Interface Center. And basically we have taken some seriously eroded hills and replaced them with something that resembles a landscape. So
I will say with the stormwater, and I will have to have a conversation about this, because it's not something at all that we didn't make any changes really, I don't believe, to that. But as a general rule in the guidelines, we're not telling people how to do things like what you're talking about and how to best. And I don't know about stormwater, but just using it, how to best, not divert, that's the wrong word, like you said, but how to best manage it. We're not able to do that. That would be a whole other guideline, just to do that. So as a rule,
the guideline you just given basically makes stormwater worse.
So we'll talk about that, and I think that Brigida, I know when she replied to her emails, if as we're reviewing them and hearing people's comments today, and then talking to CA Legal, how much we can get into those things, we'll certainly reach out, if we have questions. And obviously you sound like you're knowledgeable, so.
Right, stormwater 50 years ago is a different story. All the houses in this village were built ballpark 50 years ago. The Open Hills Interface had basically issues because it was built in 1972. You wouldn't build a building like that or a house like that at this point. So you have to make sure that what you're doing is not making things worse by trying to do something that might have a positive impact, but actually you're doing the opposite.
Kind of like what I was referring to with Gatsby Green, where upstream we have the concrete chutes that they thought prevented erosion, but created further downstream because it.
I gave middle school walks in the village. Following DCA structures and pointing out where all the problems are. And you can literally walk your way from Stevens Forest Road to the pond at the end of Pushcart. And you see every single bad example of what you shouldn't do. Every 100 feet, some other example comes in, including a resident's black pipe coming right out of the side of the hill, dropping directly into the stream, just making things worse.
Rebecca, did you have a follow-up for Mr. name we can't pronounce? Mr. Hans?
Mr. Hans. Actually, I couldn't even hear whose name you said, but once I heard him talking, I knew who it was. I guess I have more of a process question for you should we amongst the board discuss what they say, or are we going to have another opportunity to do that? Or do I need to come to the work session for the architecture board to further discuss?
So the scope of the discussion tonight is, to follow up on what we've received in public comment. So if it's within that scope, yes. If it's something else, that's where the board did its work prior to the public comment.
And
Gotcha.
after we do the work session and we put out the revised draft of the guidelines, certainly they will be sent out as an attachment. And just like with anything, if we have we have a discussion prior to a vote, so that discussion would also allow for maybe additional questions as well, if not.
Gotcha. Okay, and so directly for Hans right now, Hans, do you think, are there, any useful parameters for landscaping and maybe Carrie or Karina can answer that too. Is there any reason that we need to limit the landscaping at all, aside from, large shrubs and trees?
I think one of the things that needs to be done is limit the planting of invasives and basically write that into the covenants. And then the second thing that needs to be done is to make sure everybody gets treated equally and point out that stormwater problems will be getting better if we get a native landscape as compared to having a half an acre of solid grass that just runs into the street, sidewalk, wherever it goes.
So one point of clarification, all we can really adjust are the guidelines. We cannot change the covenants because the covenants are contracts between the community association and each property owner in Oakland Mills. So we can't legally unilaterally change the covenants governing the properties. That's a much larger process, really involving the whole community and involving everyone as members of OMCA. So we do have to make sure that we're, keeping that distinction between, guidelines, which are guidelines, and the legally binding covenants themselves. So for example, OMCA can't just outlaw non-native species within Oakland Mills. We just, we can't legally do that.
No.
No.
No. So it's,
So we take a state action to basically get some type of a county action that would be imposed on the
no, I mean, chances are,
county can do it either.
no. So it's a binding legal document between Oakland Mills Community Association and all of the owners of Oakland Mills. I mean, to my knowledge, there's never been a change. There's never, that house bills, so an example, obviously, that we're working on, right, if we're talking about right now is the House bill, whichever one, that one. But this is not the first time as an organization that OMCA has had to look at House bill and look at our guidelines and make sure that we are allowing for those House bills and the requirements for those House bills. This is far from the first time. So we are well aware that, we have to follow that, and we have now wording notwithstanding, we understand that how we worded it, we're going to review. And for some of the folks who've just gotten here, I can tell you're connected somehow, so let me, you may not have heard this because you were, okay. So, all right, no, good. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we absolutely are not trying to discourage low impact landscaping at all. It is just, it is an equal requirement for any kind of landscaping. And like Jonathan just said, we can't make a rule against this versus that. We can encourage things, but even that, we're not professionals, so I can't, I enforce the violations or covenant violations. I am not and will never be able to go out to a property and look at this plant and that plant and determine that this one is a non-native and this one is a native. And then therefore this is now a violation or this is not a violation. So we could, even if we could put all these things in, it would make no difference because I wouldn't be able to correctly enforce.
So basically what you're saying, you're gonna treat everybody equally.
Exactly.
Okay, well, that's fine. And
Right.
then we'll basically take it up at the state level, make sure they can't sell invasives. We'll do
And
it.
that's a different, right,
That's a different
completely-
ballgame.
right, that's.
That will be,
completely other
that will be
word.
House Bill 427, so we'll
Right.
take care of that.
And that was my point about the unreasonable burden in the language. I want to make sure that in our effort to encourage low impact by adding, language to encourage that, we don't make it appear that we're treating that with greater scrutiny, because that's not the intent. Everything gets the same scrutiny. We prefer that you come in with something low impact, but we can't prevent you from not doing it that way.
One of the things we're willing to offer, and now I'm speaking in my term as OMI Green Team Lead, because I lead all of the activities at OMI as far as the outside. environmental activity goes. We do have examples of every single version of stormwater and native planting that can be applied in the village in small or big quantities. So we'd be glad to work with Open Mills Village to provide a workshop or a tour that basically says, on this day, come at an open house and see what you actually can do in your own yard, because we've planted somewhere near 2,000 plants and trees in the last 2 years. And basically, as a result of that, we have a working laboratory, if you want to call it that, of this works, that works, that works, this is great. And maybe not so good, you know, that sort of thing.
I think the more we can do to educate and encourage, the better. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, we just, you know, we just don't have the legal authority to make it a requirement, unfortunately. Rebecca, did you have more follow-up to Hans? Or is that your hand
No.
raised from before?
It's about what Hans was saying, but I want Karina's I guess voice on it. Is there a reason that do you know the history behind why we even have people need to put an application in for landscaping? Like if I want to dig up some grass and plant some, I'm gonna say daisies, sorry, all yards alive people, just that's the first flower, some cone flowers. If I want to dig up some grass and plant some cone flowers, I guess why is there even a requirement for the landscaping aside from big shrub, view breaks, which I think is treated separately, and trees are treated separately?
So there isn't.
Does that make sense?
If you want to plant an individual plant, there is no requirement, regardless of what kind it is, for you to apply for it. The requirement for applying for gardening and landscaping is based on the size and location of such work. So, basically what let me find it so that I'm just. I mean, essentially if you are going to have a garden, and I might be misquoting, so don't go ahead and say now, well, Karina told me this, and this is what she said exactly. It's literally, you need to look at the guidelines once they're completed. But no application is required for individual garden beds. Here we are. This is the proposed. So again, it's not definite, but this is more or less the same as what it is, except it was prior. But now we're trying to change it so that it includes all gardening of all kinds equally. So no application is required for garden beds, provided that is within 15 feet from the rear of the house. It's less than 200 square feet. It's planted on a grade that doesn't cause drainage problems. Though, as long as it meets these criteria, there's no application needed. So if it's less than 200 square feet, right, and this is a garden bed, we're not talking about individual plants. So you can have an individual coneflower, whatever you said, you can put those in your yard. But if you're going to replant your entire yard with whatever plants they are, whether they be low impact or not, again, because we don't get to say no, yay or nay to either, then you need to apply.
This gets same in.
Why?
Construction, because basically I can do 200 square feet every 20 minutes and basically do my entire 10,000 square feet without having to get a permit, because they're individual beds. So this bed is 200 square feet. I'll make sure they're 195 square feet and do it every 6 months. I'll be fine to completely cover my yard. Just so you know, my entire yard was grass when I moved in. I have 150 square feet left, okay? And that has been done sequentially, but what you're now doing is the same thing the county does, building codes. You don't need a building code if it's under 300 square feet, and I'll pick a number, I think it's 200. So if you build 2 structures and then 2 structures and then a bridge with the 3rd structure, and they're all under 300 square feet, you can build a 900 square foot addition without getting a building permit. That's the sort of thing you're encouraging here. It's like basically having to do guerrilla tactics to get around the rule. 200 square feet. Because 200 square feet is nothing. I mean, just looking at the table stair, if you do that 10 feet out, That's a 200 square foot bed. Beds, you know, properties around here are 10,000 square feet on average. Your average lot is a quarter acre, 10,000 square feet, give or take a little bit. That's 50 flower beds. That seems a little ridiculous.
I was just thinking, Karina, or everybody, as far as best practices go, we do, and for the stormwater issue, we do want people planting more plants. Even if they're not natives, but not grass, because that's so awful. So this kind of hinders that, right? Because if I want to expand beyond 15 feet beyond my house, then and I guess it also poses the issue of which gardens were there before. So I guess I want to explore further with the board of just getting rid of these guidelines, period.
Bill?
My focus would be that the bottom line function and purpose of covenants, as several lawyers have explained to me, is to maintain and enhance property values. And what would be important is whatever we do with our structures and our land, that we don't adversely affect the property values. And so that's high level. And Mr. Hans makes a point about, well, you can piecemeal your way up to a total package. And my question would be, what is the effect of the total package? Okay, what's the ultimate bottom line? What is the effect on that property and neighboring properties? Is it positive? Great. If it's negative, not so good. And then, of course, beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. So my thought is we need to be consistent in terms of landscaping, small, medium, large, piecemeal over time, or one big project, so that the net effect over 2 years, whether it's piecemeal or one project, is a positive effect on the property and surrounding properties, okay? And in the context of stormwater management, I understand lawn doesn't absorb as much water as many other things. But if we look at a bigger picture balance, that lawn serves the purpose of it is open sightlines. It's a place where people can play or cook out. And so I can see it being a negative for stormwater management, but it's a positive for keeping kids healthy and not letting them get overweight and fat. It's a positive for safety on a property, because police say when you put lots of shrubs all around your house, that's where bad guys can hide or break in. So I'm looking at a big picture and balance in how we approach this, so that there might be some competing interest on stormwater management, so you do some of that on your property. But if you have kids, you keep some of it grass so they can get out and play, so that we have a balance overall. And so those are some of my personal perspectives.
And I think all of this is, again, we've noted, and I appreciate all of the feedback. I think this is becoming a slippery slope. Personally, I think we will absolutely take all of this into consideration. There are historical purposes now. If we're wiping out with the idea that we're now going to wipe out a requirement for application of landscaping of any kind. The issue there, I think, becomes, and again, I'm trying not to go down a slippery slope with this conversation, but the people we have in this room are likely the people who are going to do things the right way, right? Even if you didn't have to apply, you're going to do it correctly. You're going to use the right plants and put them in the right spot. You're knowledgeable and you know what you're doing. But if we're just taking out requirements for applications, and then there are people, and trust me, it happens, and maybe this is not a bad thing in the eyes of, you know, low impact landscaping, but people are gonna go out, well, actually, people just let their yard grow, they go, and we're talking about invasives, we're not talking about, you know, and now if we take away the requirement for an application, we're now allowing people to then say, well, this is my low impact landscaping, and again, we are not the professionals to identify and be able to say, no, that's not a native species, that is this. So that is why part of the reason why we need these applications. Then we are requiring people to give some thought to what it is that they're going to do. We're not expecting a professional landscaping design unless that's what somebody wants to do and chooses to do. But it's expected that there's going to be a plan with what they know, what you're looking to do, with an intention behind it. And that's really what we're looking at. And this is still, I mean, this, just like anything else, we're gonna be learning over time and revising. So in 5 years, what we know about low impact landscaping and what makes sense may change as to what we have right now. And that's just kind of the process of this.
So I'm gonna say
We have neighbors.
we're gonna go back and look at this, but we do have to keep moving on because we have people who are waiting to speak who haven't had the opportunity. So I have, well, now all the hands went down. Carrie, you hadn't spoken yet, but I do have Megan who has signed up to speak. And then I have Paul. So Megan, I'll start your 3 minutes. And then after we've responded to Megan, I'll go to Paul for your 3 minutes.
You can sit right there.
Just right there, okay, sorry. Yes, so as yours allowed, we sent in all our comments, very lengthy, I don't want to restate them. I just wanted to come in, talk a little bit about how large of a burden an application is. And I really hope that you'll consider reducing the amount of applications that we have to have for low impact landscaping, and for me, solar panels. I had to wait like an hour to get my solar panel application signed off on because somebody had a difficult problem before me, and that is too much of a burden. They took them 2 seconds to go through my application and just sign off. And I would encourage you to look at wildlife interfaith, or not wildlife interfaith, wildlife village guidelines, because they took a lot of the application burdens out. And they did this, was 2020, 2021 is when they did it. So, or it was after the low impact landscaping law. They took a lot of the application burdens out, and they put general guidelines, general design guidelines that I thought were really well written to help guide people. For the low impact landscaping, they just have guidelines for rain barrels and solar panels. They tell you what they're looking for with the solar panels, but you don't have to do an application. So I would just encourage you to take a look at those. They're really well done.
Okay, thank you. Follow up for Megan?
I just have one
Yes.
thing. So we did actually follow up with Wild Lake, and they actually haven't revised their guidelines. They put in
They put in documentation to help, more of like a supplemental appendix that was talking about.
Yeah.
That is not part of their guidelines. It's not
It's
enforceable.
separate.
It's part of it, right?
Yeah.
It's separate.
Yeah.
They are actually getting ready to review their guidelines, within the next year or so.
Okay.
So they'll be doing the same process that we've gone through, which is more or less identical. I think each village is slightly different on how they do it. It is my understanding that specifically in terms of low impact, that they will be requiring applications as well. Just as they do for any other gardening, just like we do. That was for a conversation I had. Now, obviously, I don't know what will end up happening,
Right.
but that is, I spoke to all of the other covenant advisors for the villages. I think maybe 1 or 2 were absent. But to my knowledge and understanding, those who have already redone their guidelines since the House bill, applications are required for any, again, the same sort of thing. I'm not saying for every single low impact piece or every single landscaping thing, whether it be low impact or otherwise, but they do require applications, and they intend on anybody who has not yet completed the review will have some requirements for landscaping.
And then I think you'll probably, it's hard because it's such a new law, it hasn't been litigated a lot, but I was under the impression that when you're looking at the burden, they're comparing it to turf grass, not just any other landscaping. Because the whole goal of the law is to not force people to grow turf grass.
And that's not at all what we're doing.
Well, when you don't have an application to put in grass and you do for other low impact landscaping, I feel like that's what you should be comparing, not one garden bed versus another.
So Corinne, let me ask this.
Yeah.
Let's say for some crazy reason, someone had a yard full of low impact landscaping, they wanted to take all that out and plant turf grass. We would require an application, wouldn't we?
So if it, we don't require an application to return something to what it was when the property was originally completed, right? So like that's it, same thing goes for any structure, any change, anything that visually changes the property. So while I hear what you're saying, and this does, it doesn't require that you have to put an application to put turf grass back in, because that's what existed
Well,
when each property was originally approved. Every property, when it was built, had to receive a letter of compliance from the CA originally in 1970, whenever each property was built. And so therefore, if you're returning it to the condition prior, no application is needed. So, no, they would
Okay,
have to.
so if it start, okay,
so if someone bought Hans's property, they would not need, if they wanted to tear it all out, put grass back in.
They
They would
could-
not, they could just do it.
They could do it because it's returning it to its prior condition, right?
But not taking out trees.
Right, any tree, once a tree is planted, it is required by Oakland Mills, not all villages require it, actually, we're one of the few that does still require applications for every tree that's removed.
Over 6 inches.
Over 6
Right,
inches.
yeah, I used, my neighbor did exactly that, and the
Yeah.
previous neighbor, I won't put it on this neighbor. The previous neighbor literally brought a bulldozer in.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding you, he brought a bulldozer and managed to collapse my retaining wall and drove the bulldozer over my retaining wall to his backyard. And then proceeded to rip 4 24-inch trees out. But when I called the village, nobody worried about the fact they didn't have a permit.
Well, that's not true, we legally can't go onto a property and stop work, but it is still, and I don't know when it happened, but
He got
again, I'm like,
he got his compliance letter because that's what ended up being in his bill of sale because of having to know the new owner. He has a compliance letter from CA, from Oakland Mills. So.
I can talk more about it, but it's fine.
no, I mean, we have to know the circumstances.
Examples that
But-
you can work through. I
but-
think
but-
the
but, yeah.
practicalities are much more difficult than what people anticipate
Yeah,
writing these rules.
but I mean, the bottom line is we also do have to be careful about treating things equally, right? Treating external alterations equally, so making to your point about solar panels, right? That's even though we're probably going to allow them, right, it's a substantial alteration to the external appearance of your home. So, while no one is here talking about this today, someone else could come in and say, well, I waited an hour behind someone because I just wanted to change the color of my front door. But it's another, alteration to the exterior appearance of the house. So we also have to be careful about saying, well, you don't have to apply for that because we like it. But you still have to apply for this because we may not like it, because we have to make sure we're not placing value judgments on any of these things, which is basically why, major changes, regardless of what they are, generally require an application.
I guess I was thinking that standardized, things that you do to your home. I think in the guidelines, sometimes you just describe something on, like if it was a rain barrel, you could specify the size, the color, the hookup, and then be done with it and not have to look at rain barrel applications or the solar panels.
Until a new rain barrel comes out with a better design and a better hookup, and then
You
we
get-
have to, so that's the problem, is
Yeah.
that these things change so quickly that what was great this year may not be great next year, and now it's built into our guidelines, so it's, yeah. I understand what you're saying, but then that's where we have to look in that bigger, longer picture, because it's every 3 to 5 years, or, yeah.
May I ask a question to the board? And this is sort of one of those Douglas answers. How many of these are actually being asked for? Because if I look at the number of applications that I see advertised every month versus the number of things I see going on around me, and I'm just talking about the next couple of streets, there's no way in hell that ratio is 1 to 1. As a matter of fact, I doubt that it's 10 to 1.
So if I'm understanding your question, just, since I have to sign off on everything, I mean, I would say that the vast majority of what I'm signing off on are tree removals where we, try to require replacement if the property doesn't have enough trees. alterations to the structure itself. I'm changing the door, I'm changing the window, I'm changing the siding, that
That's
sort
not
of
my
thing.
question, this is how
Okay.
many of these that are actually being changed, do you get applications?
But we have no idea.
Yeah,
We
we
would-
couldn't even
there's-
begin
we wouldn't
to
know.
answer.
One
So-
of the things I think
Right.
that
Right.
mentally, I think the board should think about at some point is how much are we actually seeing?
We could go around
You've tried.
day after day after day.
But we need a lot more employees.
No, I know, I'm just asking if you have a sense of it, that's mostly, but this is. the
No, what
thing,
we-
the one person that wants to make an application is being nice and asking for his neighbors is, I think, a rarity. In the village.
So the only way we have of knowing is based on complaints that come in. Someone sees something happening, they don't think they got approval, so they file a complaint, we go out and verify that.
Compared to damage.
Or when someone's ready to, let's mute everyone, when someone's ready to, sell their
Yeah.
home and they can get the letter of compliance, and then they find out there's non-compliance because of some unapproved change that they did.
The second best of the game.
Jonathan, I can comment on that.
Sorry, as soon as I muted her.
Go ahead, Carrie.
I can comment to that with the letters of compliance. Can everybody hear me okay?
So,
Okay. Aside from going around and being big brother and inspecting every property every couple years, actually literally going around and doing that, which we know nobody wants. I can tell you, doing letters of compliance, that unapproved alterations are on less than half of the full inspections we do. So that speaks to that. The statements we keep saying of applications, the purpose of having the applications for things like landscaping are specifically to make people think about it. And yes, I understand there will always be someone who will figure out a way to avoid the rule, no matter what rule we put in place. So I appreciate that. And I just think that the reason we've added and said we need to make sure and clarify that everything should be applied for, which the covenants specifically do say pretty much everything needs to be applied for, is just to make sure people are thinking about it and planning out what they want to do. And I think Karina covered everything I wanted to say earlier, that when I put my hand up the first time.
Why not?
Thank you.
Okay, so the testimony we're still on is Megan's. Rebecca, did you have a follow-up to anything for Megan? Because we still have Paul waiting.
You're mute.
You're muted.
You're mute.
Rebecca, you're muted. She's not.
Sorry, there we go. Yeah, real quick. Megan's comment about solar panels. I understand it's a major operation, but I think we have to think about what is the bad outcome we are trying to avoid, right? Like, we have limitations on house colors because we don't want somebody painting their house flamingo pink in the middle of our brown street. But as far as solar panels go, and yes, I understand the rain barrel argument that potentially they could come out with some crazy design that we don't want on our roofs. But right now, solar panels pretty much all look the same. So it just feels like an undue burden to require people to apply for the same looking solar panel that's going to be on the roof. So anyway, that's what I was just thinking, is it's not about the major alteration. It's what's the worst case that we're trying to avoid by having these guidelines. And there is no worst case looking solar panel that's any, an atrocity that I don't want my neighbor to put up.
Well, Carrie could maybe, I don't know, Carrie could probably speak to this even more than me, but there are worst case scenarios and there are situations because there are different kinds of solar panels, and such as putting them in the middle of your yard versus putting them on your roof.
So
These
if
are
we
things
just
to consider.
require, oh, sorry. So if we require them on roofs,
And then also where they're running the
Cabling.
cabling and things, these can cause issues, and there are people who, and this is another covenant advisor in another village. There was actually an application, and the way they wanted to run it, the solar company wanted to run it this specific way. The village said that really isn't ideal. It's very obvious. It's the reason, because it's right in front of somebody else's window. I don't remember what it was exactly. long story short, ultimately, the solar panel company wanted to run it that way because it would be the fastest way for them to do it. But it was also $300 more expensive, so the person who was installing it, once they changed it to what the village wanted, they saved them like $300 or $400. So obviously that's a one-off, but these are all things that, you know, it's not always gonna be that we're making it harder and worse on somebody. Really, it's just being realistic. It's also for record keeping purposes, like I talked about, where you can take something, you can revert something to what it was previously. We don't know what something was previously, you know, we're trying to document things so that down the road, people know what was there, or, you know, what we can do, instead of having to guess and say, well, this was this, or was it not that, and.
So another point I wanted to make in all of this is I think we kind of think of these guidelines and this application process as burden and making it harder to do things, and I can understand that, but also I would encourage everyone to think of it from the other direction. It's also protection for the resident, because if you come in with an application and you get it approved and you do it according, you know, to what was approved, your neighbors may hate it. They can file complaint after complaint, and we're gonna tell them it's approved, you can't do a thing about this.
And that happens a lot.
If you did, like, if you do one of those bad solar panel installations and, you know, spend all that money to do it, and a neighbor comes in and complains, and sure enough, we look at it and we go, well, yeah, the solar panel's up there fine, but the cabling's all wrong. You could have a problem. So it's, I know at first it seems burdensome, but it also has, you know, come back. I've seen these cases. It's come back to the protection of the residents, where someone's coming in complaining, wanting them to take something down or undo something, and we go and say, no, they did it as approved.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we might just wait when we're in environmental groups, so we wait the environmental impacts higher. Like I like aesthetics, I like the neighborhood looking nice, but we need these things done fast, for environmental reasons. And yeah, these burdens, they're probably just affecting us, the ones that are paying attention, like people are just gonna go.
They may be, but I mean, one thing I will say is I think, you know, if everything's done correctly and you work with the covenant advisor, in this case, it would be Mike, not Karina. I mean, our process is pretty fast, you know, to get the application, get it scheduled on the rack and get an approval done.
Like spring and fall install season from Thanksgiving, it's already short, and then you're putting this extra 2 weeks, sometimes 4 week burden. Not really slow.
But this talks to Carrie's point of, we want people to be thinking about what they're doing in advance of doing it, right? So if you know this is the right thing to do, the right time to do it is not 3 weeks before you need to plant it. It's, and I don't know the timing, but it's in, you know, December before you want to plant it in the spring, so that you have months before you're planting, right? Like, just like anything else, the same thing for somebody who wants to paint their door, and you know you're not gonna paint it in December, but if you apply ahead of time, then it's not an unreasonable expectation that, you know, now, okay, you're approved, so you can do it whenever is appropriate for you and works best, whether it be based on weather or environment or just your personal schedule.
Yeah, remember, approvals are good forever. So once something's approved, unless you alter what got approved. So, you know, you could get approval for something today that you plan to do the spring after this coming spring, and you can still do it.
And if you are just looking for a garden footprint, like just somebody draw out this is the shape of the garden, this is the general, like how much detail, like it's not clear from the guidelines how much, like it seems like you want a detailed plan. But if it's just a footprint and you're like, I'm gonna have a designer do this, but can I reserve this footprint of land to do this? It'll be this height maximum. This is what I'm thinking, sort of thing.
I think that they're gonna want more detail than that, but I don't work on the application, so I don't wanna misspeak about that, but I believe they do want more detail. The height for sure.
Yeah.
That would be a absolutely, but I could be wrong.
And what you're looking at now is something that we did actually look at in the fall, is the timeline of, and how we would ask people. I mean, Dave was part of that too, as far as reviewing the application process and, you know, when Mike contacts you and how that whole process works. So that's all online. So that's actually what that's speaking to more so.
Rebecca, did you have another follow-up to Megan?
Yeah, last thing real quick. I know there's a lot of people who want to speak. I would just encourage us to come up with more guidelines of acceptable things, because I know there's a lot of precedent in this with respect to other stuff. So things for like the solar panel or for the car charging stations, things like that, that we can say, if it meets these criteria, you don't need to have an application. So there's still some limitations on what can be put in, but it prevents people who are doing it by the book to need to have an application. So if you put the solar panels on your roof and the wiring is an inconspicuous location and it covers this area, then you don't have to apply. Things like that. So it allows for freedoms and for changing times, but also it gives us the oversight.
I mean, I think that's, yeah, I think that's definitely something we can go back and look at, because we do that for other, right? We do that with air conditioners, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think-
we just have to
See
see.
garage doors.
Yeah, I think it's a hard one, again, when we're talking about, because this technology's changed, like garage doors aren't really changing a lot, right? So when you're talking about things that do change on regularly and can change quickly, what is now acceptable if we had that now, and we've never really gotten into this. I know Carrie and I had talked about it previously, is having a fast track option.
Mhm.
That's something I think we could consider.
I wrote that in my
Yeah,
notes, actually.
and for those who are listening, who don't know what fast track is, there are a few villages who have where, you know, if it's this thing and it falls and it doesn't run, it's kind of what you were saying, Rebecca, and it doesn't fall outside of these parameters, then basically we don't have to go to the, and I could be, we'd have to figure out the details of it, but the application process might be shorter. It may not require that you come to the meeting. And that's something that we could consider on some things like, you know, that we're talking about. Again, because we don't, by not requiring the application, then we don't have documentation, to Jonathan's point of now somebody complains about it. And now we have to call you or track you down and say, you know, somebody's complaining about this, and let's make sure that it is everything. If we've already approved it, then we don't have to worry about any of that, and it's done and it's documented, and down the road in 20 years, if somebody's reading our guidelines and isn't interpreting it in the same way we are, the application's there. And believe me, we have gone to many applications in the past that don't have nearly as much detail, and it saves everybody heartache, because we say, well, it was approved. It may not be what we like, but it was approved, so now it's fine and it's done, and
Carrie, did you have a follow-up to Megan?
Yes, along the lines of, I don't know if it technically at this point I lost track of the discussion, if it was a follow-up to Rebecca or to Megan. Yes, we have discussed implementing something like fast track, where more items that are not don't have to go through the full application process to get almost an automatic approval. It's a very challenging process, because you have to be extremely specific as to what is allowed, because it's very easy for someone to interpret what you've written very differently, which is part of the discussion problem we've already had. We've already seen that in this conversation today. And as Karina said, we're looking at rewriting again, and we appreciate the input. If Rebecca, if you ever wish to hear worst case scenarios of things that were applied and we caught it, please give me a call. I can read you stories for hours from being the RAC advisor, the covenant advisor for applications for 6 years. I can tell you, we've had some horror stories that, yeah. So beyond the scope of a meeting, call me another time.
All right, Paul, I think you're last to speak, and you've been waiting very patiently.
Yeah, I submitted some comments knowing you had your 3-minute limitation. I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the submittal that I gave you. If there are no questions, then I do have an additional item that I would like to discuss.
Go ahead with your additional item and then we'll follow up on everything.
Okay. I was glad to see the Appendix H on maintenance items. There's an additional comment that I want to make on shrubs. Namely because of some issues that I've seen where shrubs are so-calledly shrubs are overgrowing houses. And I have one in my neighborhood. And I know that there's been complaints put in on it. And so I'd like to see shrubbery basically defined. You say on page 10, shrubbery should not be overgrown. And then you have, for example, foundation plantings, and I think plantings should really say shrubs. But I think you need a definition for shrubs, and I'm offering the following. Shrubs are defined as having multiple stems and are of low height. And I think that would take care of this issue of whether we're dealing with shrubs or whether we're dealing with trees. Because that is some issues that I'm seeing around some of these homes where the trees are planted so close to the house that they've overgrown the house and you can't even see the windows or even the front door for that matter. So that's an example of one, and I really appreciated the discussion about landscaping because in this particular case, there was no landscaping plan that I'm aware of that was put in for this particular location. So that's kind of the other major item that I had after looking at the guidelines.
Okay, thank you, Paul. So just to follow up on your feedback to make sure I have the right thing for the EV chargers. Were you suggesting that we remove the requirement for application as that's under county jurisdiction?
No.
Or
No,
okay, because I saw something in your email that said remove it says 14-4.3. I wasn't sure if that should be read 14.3 or
That was, it was another, he was referring, I believe, to the courts, if I'm remembering correctly.
oh, okay.
yeah, that was what that was referring to was
Yeah.
the cords are to not cross public walkways.
Oh, okay, okay.
And I said that should be removed because that's not under our jurisdiction at all. And we should not be making any comments on it, in my opinion, particularly because I'm in discussions with the county where they may actually allow something like that. That's been allowed in multiple cities and I'm thinking particularly of what happened down at the Christmas Mart, where they had a big tent and they had their conduits covered by kind of an A-frame thing, and people were walking over these. And that was acceptable to the county. So I don't think we should get in the middle of whatever the county decides to do.
Yeah, no, if I'm understanding correctly, I agree with that because really our authority ends at the property line. So, kind of similar to, we can't tell you we can tell you what condition your car needs to be in parked in your driveway, but when you move it to the street, it's a county issue. We don't comment on that. We send you to the county. I look at that similarly.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's a really tricky thing and a lot of the villages are struggling with it right now. And most specifically, I think in townhomes, because
Yeah.
you're going from the individual owner's property to common property for the HOA to county property back to kind of common property and how we manage that because it's requiring multiple applications from multiple people. So it's just a really tricky.
But, you know, I think we can fall back on the sub HOA rule. If this is primarily in townhome and condo communities, whoever is more strict takes precedence. So let them deal with their common properties, because really they know their common properties better than we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are not county sidewalks within those HOAs. Those
Well,
are,
some of them are actually, what is it, which is one, I wanna say, I think, oh, maybe not sidewalks.
I don't
Is it
know.
Carlton?
I don't know
Just
that
the
this, I
road?
think it's just the road. I don't know that the
Okay,
sidewalks
yeah,
are, because
you're right.
normally the roads are county, but then the parking pads
Well, not all.
are common. Well, yeah, I mean, in the ones that do have, yeah, not, I know. In the ones that do have public roads,
Yeah.
normally what it is the road is county, but then once you get off the road right onto that parking pad, you're into the
Yeah.
common area of that HOA, yeah.
But yeah, I hear you on that.
Okay, all right, thank you, Paul.
Megan gets.
are there any other questions that anyone has? I'd be happy to answer them.
The definition of shrub is one of those wonderful things. It's anything under 25 feet. So, there.
You know, I heard what was.
No, I understand your concern, but basically botanically and landscape architecture wise, anything that's a multiple stem structure and that does not reach for the sky eventually is considered a shrub. So like a winterberry, we have a meeting house is probably 12 feet tall and 10 feet wide. It's a shrub and it's been there about 15 years and it will get taller and taller and maybe it'll stop growing at some point, but I know, for instance, what is the other one? Bay magnolia, sweet bay magnolia, you know, it's a shrub. However, it's, in my yard, it's already 16 feet, you know?
I think it would be hard for you to, have guidelines on that, because we can't look at a small, you have to ID plan.
Yeah.
How people.
And additionally, anything, to your point, if something is within 25 feet, I try to take somebody to court for their shrubs. And that's gonna get thrown out right away. If it's less than 25 feet, it is, well, then it doesn't matter. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I understand your issue with shrubs climbing the
Sure.
side of the hill, and
Yeah.
generally, let's be straightforward, the ones that do like that are generally invasive. And
Yeah.
trying to do that, so we'd like to get rid of them anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
I think the wiggle room there is, again, wiggle room. Rather than, you know, something we can apply. I'd love to be able to shoot the one.
Okay, was there any more resident feedback? Going once, going twice? All right, well, thank you very much. I mean, this is, you know, fantastic discussion, and I
Thank you all.
fully appreciate everything everyone is saying. It's, trust me, all being taken under careful consideration, and, you know.
Warren has one of these, but in case you all decide that you want to do this, this is what, okay.
I want you to pronounce your last name.
Blah.
Plaha, okay.
Okay, just a
Did you-
sound.
Plaha, okay, well, that, I could have done that.
Thank you.
It's,
Plaha.
if you speak Hebrew, then it's okay. Anything
do,
beyond
yeah.
that, being great, see you guys. But yeah, I mean, this is the sort of thing where as a community, if we do the education part, you know, and again, only the people who really want to be educated are going to show up. You know, it's still, you know, worth doing.
Yeah.
And it's a freebie. It doesn't cost any effort or time. So.
All right, thank you. Okay, Karen's not here, but she still wanted us to keep the proposed real property policy on the agenda. Because I think. Yes, the reason, I'm sorry, I don't know if that email went to everyone or just a few of us. The reason Karen's not here is CA has a meeting on their president search that got scheduled at the same time, and it got scheduled at very last notice. So the CA board is reviewing their policy on land transactions. It's on the agenda for both of their March meetings and a vote on April 25th. So, we as a board under new business at our last meeting looked at Karen's proposal. I know we asked her a few questions, had some discussion. And when we were planning the agenda for this meeting, she asked about bringing it back as old business. And I said, well, absolutely, if you want it brought back. But what are you looking to do in old business? Are you looking for us to, potentially take a vote to see if we want to go on the record supporting this? And I believe the response was yes. So we can have discussion tonight. Unfortunately, she can't be here to respond to any additional questions we have. So hopefully from the discussion last time, plus the couple of weeks we've had with it since, if we had anything more for Karen, we were able to, ask her those questions over email. But if anyone on the board would like to discuss further, I can open it up now. Alternatively, or additionally, really, if anyone on the board is, satisfied enough with what they've seen and what they heard at the last meeting that they want to motion for support of this proposed policy so we can go on the record, I can take a motion as well. So first I'll ask if there was any further discussion any members of the board wanted to hold on the proposed policy. Going once, going twice. I don't see anyone online raising a hand. Okay.
Okay, I move that the board take a position in support of the transaction on real property policy.
Okay, so there's a motion from Bill that we take a position in support of the policy as presented by Karen at our last meeting. Is there a second to that?
Sure.
Okay, got a second from Warren. Is there any discussion of that potential position?
My only concern is that it seems like we're putting, and I don't know enough about all the transactions, that we would put a bureaucratic hurdle on things that are small. Because it seems like it's just all transactions. So I don't know enough about the business to know if we're hindering somebody wants something very small. So it's a minor thing. I don't know. Does anyone else know that?
I don't know how many of these there are in
it's
a typical year. Yeah.
Would there be something that, oh, we just need this done, and it's like, oh, we can't do it until we get it to go through this pretty long process. You have to hire someone to, it might be like, oh, we just need a transaction to sell this small piece so we can have a driveway or something. You know what I'm saying?
I was just gonna say, I think if I understand what she's asking, it seems that she's just looking at support to do some changes, but not specifically to start the process of changing. If that makes sense, because it says, board
Oh.
weigh in with their thoughts and support changing the existing policy. I will be continuing to talk to my fellow board members. So that's just.
It's not a.
I don't think it's, and that's just my understanding, like, it's not whatever it's going to be. I mean, there was a draft, but I don't think we're voting on this, or not me,
Okay,
but.
so that's where I'm not completely clear.
Okay, so you interpreted it differently.
I'm not sure.
No, okay, thank you.
But
Changing the
but to
existing
Warren's point, to the point that I guess what could be defined as maybe, de minimis situations arise. I agree, there should be some less burdensome, we use the term fast track in here for our guidelines. I just don't know. I don't know whether such a thing exists or what the definition of, de minimis would be. Because I just don't know enough about CA's holdings and, how often these things happen. Bill?
Yes, I understand your point, Warren, absolutely. My thought was it's much better than what exists today because there were major hassles that occurred because there wasn't something like this comprehensive in place. And I thought this could be a first step. Then as they would go to implement and as time went by, they would come up with the small situations where they'd say, hey, this is a minor thing, let's adjust the policy to fast track the minor things as a two-step process. I'd like it to be maybe in here. My major concern is I don't want to have happen what happened in the past with weak policy. I'd rather go strong policy and then maybe back it off in this circumstance and that one, as opposed to maintain what exists and get caught again with what happened. So I agree with your point, though.
Yeah,
I agree. I mean, I think this will make it transparent, and then the public can be involved in transactions, and we have someone, they'll hire someone to make sure it's to our benefit.
so we had a motion for the policy as she presented it. We've had a second, but now we have discussion and to Brigitta's point, she's asking for us to weigh in with our thoughts and support changing the existing policy. Now, I read support changing the existing policy as changing it to what she's
That's what
Mhm.
presented.
Yes,
That's what I
what
read.
she presented, yes,
But
I agree.
it's kind of hard to put thoughts into a vote, but I think we could, if we wanted to, we could amend this motion to say we basically substantially support what she put in front of us, you know, with further discussion for allowances for, a faster process for small transactions or something. We don't even have to define what that is. We can just encourage the CA board to think about that and define what that is.
Well, in the draft she provided to us the last time, this is what I was looking for. It says this policy supersedes any existing policies and applies to all new and renewing applications. I was trying to see if maybe there was something in there that broke it down into, you know, what you were looking at, like the larger ones as opposed to the
Right.
smaller one, but she just presented us with the draft, so she hasn't presented us anything further, which is
Right.
why I assumed she would be making, based on her, that's what my interpretation of what she was asking. And it may have been an incorrect interpretation, and I guess I should have clarified with her prior to,
Yeah, and I'm going back to the email exchanges, because when she asked about this coming back as old business, you said it would go back as old business if she has an update, and then I followed up to you and said, or if you're ready for us to take a vote on it, but I don't want to force the issue if you're not ready. So she responded to you about the operations committee and the proposed policy. And then she responded to me and she said, I would like the OMCA village board to vote on supporting the CA board moving forward with updating the easement policy. So again, that could be taken as.
yeah, see, I still take it as they're
Move
going to.
forward with doing something or move forward with doing what I'm
Yeah.
proposing, and I'm
That's how
not
I
sure.
interpret that.
Yeah,
Yeah, Karen, I was looking at how she's titled the draft. How has she titled the draft?
Policy on transactions of Columbia Association.
Okay,
she also said she'd really love feedback on what the OMCA village board would want to see changed, added as the CA board moves through the process. So that indicates it's still fluid, but I guess her thing is a starting point. So maybe we could support what she's doing support changing the policy using what she's doing as a starting point and leave it at that. I don't,
With the idea that,
with the idea that it would be further refined, yeah,
yeah, see, because it does say draft, so we could
yeah,
put that in there, that we support the draft and that CA furthers
Right.
refinement of the draft, and that if you want, we could put in there might be consideration for some kind of a fast track process for small land transactions, you know, as a potential to be explored.
You want to revise your motion?
maybe,
Yeah, okay. Let's see, do I have to amend it, or simply can I come and revise it?
redo it.
I don't know, Amy, what, did you say redo it?
You could withdraw it and redo it.
Good, why don't we do
Okay,
that? Just withdraw
I will
and redo it.
withdraw my original motion, and the new motion will be that we support the draft and as the first part of a process with the CA board to come up with a new policy, and that we offer for their consideration a fast track process for small land transactions.
I would second.
I like that.
Okay.
Okay, Warren seconds.
said.
Okay, any further discussion? I'm gonna call a vote before anyone can. No, Warren, no, I'm glad you said that, because you made it an excellent point. I mean, you know. This could make it very burdensome for like a couple of feet or something like that.
yeah.
Okay, all in favor? 1, 2, 5, 0, 0. All right.
Great.
Let's see, board chair reports. Well, as you can all see from the signs, it is confirmed Hip Hop Chicken is moving in next door. So I don't, you know what, in the interest of time, I'm gonna move on to Brigitte.
Okay, well, just for the record, Karen did also send in her, update, which is part of the attachments, just so everybody has them.
Yeah, I read
Okay, so our first order, is to review and vote on the third quarter, financials. And everybody should have, received, a copy of both, what Debbie gave to me as far as the review of the financials, as well as my, variance memo with the explanations for the items that required comments. So, I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Did we get a packet of that?
It should be
It's in our
included
packet.
in there, Warren, yes.
Must have
It
been-
starts with February 21st, Jackie.
Got it. I looked at it twice and somehow didn't register.
And just a big thing to note, on 21, well, 16 and 21, those items were higher because both of those are affected by when we have an election, both with the postage, excuse me, as well as the printing. So that's why I listed in there that, should we have a contested election, that those will, of course, will balance out because of that particular item.
I mean, this is a lot of information. I looked at it online. Is there, I'm not gonna be able to pick something out. I didn't really see anything I had any questions about, but is there anything else that you think might be something that will bite us later?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I will tell you that it's interesting the way we have to do the budget, and Sandy may have told you this before, but the way CA has us break down the budget, which all villages present their budget the same.
Right.
So like with the donations, we disperse our donations in one quarter. So it looks like, and the other quarters were much lower, but during this quarter, when we distribute all of them, we go above. So some of those things are funny like that. And then with same thing with the payroll benefits. It's kind of the way they play out into how everybody does their fiscal year, how everybody does their quarters, however things are dispersed. So, and going through a full year of a budget and paying very close attention, that's one of the things that I noticed, which I don't think there's any way to get around in future budgets, just because, like I said, of the way it's broken down. But also in doing the third quarter financials, the accountant does a projection for what she feels we will end the year at. And we are fine. We, however, do not have an excess amount to do another donation time period. So, but other than that, those are the big things.
What is roughly, what is her forecast? I mean, will we be in the black, but not cutting a check to CA? Under their cap?
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes,
Okay.
that's our goal. She made a suggestion as to items that we have an end of year wish list. And she said which items she would recommend that we purchase those under. So I've been working with
Okay.
Amy and Ashley as far as items that we may need for the building or for our office. So
Okay, very good.
And what's that number? for the, so do we have to cut a check to CA?
It's over 20%.
20%.
20%.
Yeah.
Yes. And I have done so much studying, I can tell you the formula now.
So,
That is a one interesting formula, how they get that. But yeah, so any other questions?
Okay, is there a motion to approve the third quarter financials as submitted?
So moved.
Motion from
I
Bill,
will second.
second from Warren. Any further discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 0. All right, operations update?
Oh, I apologize. So, mostly, you all received my, manager's update, but I will tell you that they are ahead of the schedule with the renovations. As you can see, the plastic behind us, that is a door that, they have brought in a little bit, and that is to make it more ADA accessible. But they are basically are done. They are finishing up back there. Through it, this is really exciting news. I had told you the last time that I got a quote for painting for the back hallway and for the kitchen and the kitchen stairwell. Well, John from CA informed me that they are going to include the painting of the back hallway and the back stairway in the project, so that doesn't come out of our finances.
Oh.
So that is lovely news. Yes, that was very exciting. I was very happy when he told me that. So I've been working with him, but that should be completed, I'm guessing, in the next week. And then they have also, the contractors have hired a cleaning crew to come in and do a thorough cleaning of the entire facility, where they were working, because of course it put together a lot of dust. I can tell you that. And then, yeah, Amy did clean up for the meeting tonight. And then, Judd will follow up after to kind of do the regular spring cleaning and anything on top of that. And then Ashley and I will finish up, so we'll be ready to open in April. And one additional item, I was hoping to get the painting of the kitchen stairwell and the kitchen itself. I don't believe I will be able to do that before the end of the fiscal year, but I am looking to do that come May or June. And I'm working with both either CA's contractors or the painter I was working with to get that taken care of. So that's the big thing. So my hope is once we are back, I'd like to invite you all to come in for a tour. So I will let you know when that's official.
Love to.
All right, committee reports, architecture. We do have one property, where we need to vote on whether we want to send a 15-day letter, for lack of compliance. Just a little background, you know, the last time we did one of these, we went into closed session, and we were talking about having a closed session today, and then I realized that I just was thinking, I don't remember doing a closed session for 15-day letters. I remember doing closed sessions when we asked CA to release a flag, because then it is a legal item. The 15-day letter, it's not a legal thing yet, because it's the 15-day letter before it becomes a legal thing. So CA did confirm that we can do these in open session, as long as we don't get into the details of who the people involved are, or, you know, what the specific violations are. So we can name the property. So you all did receive information about that property, and what the violations are. And obviously those violations have not been brought, you know, we've not gotten adequate responses about a plan to bring those violations back into compliance. So I'm looking for a motion to send that 15-day letter to the property, which is 5306 Slipper Court.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? Any discussion, keeping in mind that the discussion really can't go into any details in open session? Okay, all in favor? Okay, 500, so we can sign off on that. And Karina, I think that's it. I looked at the email traffic below what Brigida then sent me from Deb, and I think that's the distinction. When we go into the closed session to lift it, CA hasn't taken them to court yet. But they're in the process, and we're telling them to stop. So we've made it At that point, we've made it a legal matter, and I think that's what we have to lift it in closed session. Or they
They've
may
either
have started,
already
yeah,
gone, they've
Yeah.
remedied the issue.
yeah.
I imagine once the letter's sent. This letter that we just voted for, then it's. a
Yeah.
legal matter.
But like if they haven't yet, or if it's not complete, like all the details aren't gonna be a Maryland case search. So we might be lifting something before it's actually public record, which is, I think, why we have to do that part in closed session.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, all right, that's all on architecture committee, because I think we've spent plenty of time already tonight in architecture, so I'm not gonna say any more. Real quickly, education, the committee did meet tonight. We just, talked a bit more about the goings on at Oakland Mills High since the flood happened since our last education meeting. If you haven't seen it, there were articles in both the Baltimore Sun and the Baltimore Banner. So
Yes.
we were actually able to get the word about Oakland Mills High School out there. And several people, including myself, were interviewed for those articles.
Name mentioned in the banner.
The delegation did also send another letter to the Board of Education and the acting superintendent about the situation there. The only other thing I have is I did follow up with my personal thoughts on House Bill 1440, which is that one that would make the Board of Education like give their rationale for doing something different than what the superintendent recommends on the capital improvement plan. So I actually sent that after our meeting a couple of weeks ago and hadn't heard back from Delegate Terrasa. So I texted her tonight and said, hey, got an OMCA meeting tonight. Anything more you need from us? And she wrote back and said, shoot. So Brigitte showed that it's scheduled for, it's a committee hearing, right?
Yes.
Committee hearing on March 12th.
Yeah.
So I'm still waiting to hear back from her on where, if anywhere that's going, but basically what I said to her, not as OMCA, just as myself was, I'll just read it. My personal feeling on the bill after talking to a couple of people is at best it's pretty useless with both sides having to publish their rationale, given that's already public record via the feasibility study, which would be the superintendent side, and open meetings, which would be the BOE side. And at worst, it still puts the BOE in a bad position because they are dependent upon the super and his or her staff for all of their data. So the super can present what looks like an objective data-driven argument based on data no one else can validate independently. And the BOE would still somehow have to come up with a singular rationale to explain the individual votes of 7 different people. So that was my personal feedback. And I'll let you all know if, this seems to be going anywhere else. Other than that, there's just a ton of stuff coming up. Amy had a loaded education newsletter that went out, so look at that. There are opportunities to do all kinds of things. I actually can't remember if this was in the newsletter. One thing that the school system is definitely looking for volunteers for in May, if you've done it before or haven't and are interested, is judges at the simulated congressional hearings. So very, very rewarding experience that I highly recommend. Every elementary school participates. It starts in early May, runs through late May. So, and our 3 elementary schools here in the village are spread out. I think, I want to say Thunder Hill is early. They're like the 8th. And then I think Talbot is the 22nd and Stevens is the 24th. Did I get that right?
You did.
I
haven't seen anything about the call yet. Is it just going out?
They sent it to me because I have done it and I can share it too.
Yeah.
I was gonna share it to everybody and then I probably got sidetracked, so.
It's next week, so.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's all. Warren, public space.
Okay, this was not in the meeting, but I just got an email back. As you recall, I was trying to get the light changed at the end of Log Chain and Millenbrook. It's behind a tree in a very dark corner. And I met with Dennis, the streetlight guy from the county. I didn't know we had one. And he said it's supposed to be 2 weeks from now. BGE told him that, so it's still happening, but it's just taking a month longer than we expected, which is par for the course, right?
Based on the destruction I've seen all over, Broken Land Parkway, BGE has a lot of repair work to do right now before they get to that. I think,
Yeah.
I think someone's just going around running their car into light posts. It's crazy.
Sign down today.
It's all over. It's crazy.
You know, I talked to Chris Jagarpu about that at the end of Stevens Forest, all those
Yeah.
street lights down. He didn't know anything about it.
I watched it happen, one of them,
Really?
on my way home from an event here. Somebody came and crossed the median and jumped the curb. I was far enough back. And there was a car in front of me, so we all stopped to make sure that they were okay. And somehow they ended up backwards and the lanes going this, they were this way. And I ducked my head out and said, is everybody okay? And the guy's like, yeah, they have it all taken care of. So we went around, but I watched it happen. And I think they took out 2 of them that time.
Wow.
So I don't know how they were okay, but thankfully they were, their car, I don't think was, but they were.
Did that one go through the bus stop? Because I looked at the tire tracks from one of them and
Yeah.
it's lucky no one was waiting at that bus stop.
Yeah.
Well, some of them, I wonder if they're on purpose, but some of them are definitely accidents like that.
So that was an accident.
That's-
Wow.
That wasn't a driving accident, that was a texting accident.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of when that was. What was it when I was leaving?
They're around, they're turning like too fast too sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know when it was.
I think you're right. It's texting.
But I think some of them might be like people with stolen cars, like running into stuff and just having fun. I think so.
It seems like there are so many of them lately that
Yeah,
it
there
can't
are.
all be accidents. But that's just my conjecture, just like yours. I don't know.
Yeah, I
That-
just drove in DC the other day.
You don't call them accidents. We don't want to talk about that now. It's,
Well, yeah,
it's a crash.
yeah.
Never call them accidents.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway. That's the
Well, okay.
bike thing in me.
I'll use a different term. I don't, it doesn't feel to me like all of them are the unfortunate results of crashes. I think some of them
Some
I
are
feel
on
like
purpose.
might be on purpose, because it's just odd
It's fun
that
to,
so
like,
many of them are
run
down
into
at
a slam.
once. Yeah. But no, but the reason I was saying that was that, like, I can tell BGE has a lot of repair work to do around here that they haven't even gotten to yet, so I have a feeling they're behind.
Sure. Okay, well said. I went to the BAG, which is the Bicycle Advisory Group. They meet 4 times a year. And they talked about, they're gonna put in wayfinding signs to show how to ride throughout the county. And there are 2 of them, 2 of the wayfinding, coral and maroon, they'll have colors, and so you can follow that color and ride without, you know, from one end of it to the other. And there's coral and maroon go through Oakland Mills, and coral goes from Meadowbrook Park to Shaker Drive at 32, and the maroon goes from Hickory Ridge at Cedar Lane to Rockburn Branch Park. So it's
Wow.
a big X, so it'll be nice. The other thing is shared electric scooters. I didn't know this, but you know, they were taken on what they did not renew the contract. They asked, the county did ask for proposals, I think at least last year, maybe the year before. And they've decided to lower the cost of entry. It used to be $10,000 to go, and so they didn't get any bids. So now it's $2,000, and they're hoping that'll make it cheaper, and then will encourage scooters. I know some people are opposed to it, some people like it. I think it's provides an opportunity for people that don't have cars to move around easily, especially in about the 1.5 mile distance. So, and they are going to do things like require more pickups. So it's not like once a week like it was before, which was, I think, the major complaint. You had a lot of electric scooter litter. And so they're trying to address that.
Yeah, and that company they had last time, they just weren't holding up their end of the deal.
Correct.
Because
Yes.
there were standards, but they weren't following them.
Right. But it does follow the same thing where it's supposed to be within a certain fence. It's still that same fence. So Oakland Mills will be part of that again, but you have to get someone to bid on it. So we might be too small at this point to do that. But we'll see. And the capital budget for bike and ped this in 2024 is about 13 million. So that's pretty good. So that's exciting for bike ped people. I think walkability is something that it enhances our community and increases the value of our homes and property. So, and I think it's just great, but it's me. And they also had a Howard County Department of Transportation open house, and they had 150 people come out for one night. It was amazing, and it's all about talking about all the spending they're doing and all the new projects they're going to build, lots of sidewalks and things like that, including 3 in Oakland Mills. One of them is at Mellenbrook Road. It's between Wild Bees and 108. And if you know that area, on the right side, on the side, when you're going towards the courthouse, it's on the right, and that's, is that this? I think they call it the south, but it seemed to me like it's the east.
Yeah, that's the east
It's
side.
east.
But I don't know. They're going to add a sidewalk in the last 2 blocks because it's missing there.
I always wondered why that wasn't there.
It's there because there's a guy that doesn't want it. And it used to be that you had to approve having a sidewalk put on your, because you have a responsibility to clear it. And that rule has changed, and now they can add it without their approval. Yeah, so that'll be great, because then you can walk to the courthouse, or you can walk to Wendy's, you can cross there. That's good. And Sandy and I and Ginny met with Chris Jagarpu many years ago about that. He said he couldn't do anything unless the guys approved it, but since the rules changed, it's happened. The other one is, guys might remember this, I know you do. It's Orchard Green Tot Lot.
Oh, yeah.
So Maryland 108 pathway, this will be in Mellenbrook, the sidewalk will be 2024, that'll be this year. The 108 pathway is going to go from Red Branch Road to Summer Hollow, which is Glenmont, where you go out of Glenmont on 108. They're going to put a multi-use path along there. The county and the state are doing that, and they're going to add a crosswalk across.
Wow.
So that's big. I've been working on that
You
for
have, wow.
3-4 years, something like that.
That's awesome.
So now we need CA. I wish Karen was here. We need CA to push for the pathway to connect Orchard Green Tot Lot to that pathway. So that'll be in 2025. That's supposed to happen. And that's, so in county speak, when they say it's 2025, that means they probably don't have the money, but they have the design. So, but not necessarily. So it might not be 2025, but that's the hope. So that's good. And the other one is the South Entrance Trail. The South Entrance Trail runs from Lake Kittamaqundi, goes under 29, goes under Broken Land, and then hits Stevens Forest. It runs along the sewer. It runs along the side of Little Patuxent River. And I walked it a couple times. It's a challenge. You can do it right now because the growth's not there yet, but it's a beautiful area. It's odd to have a place in Columbia that's so remote, and it's but you're hearing highways, and so, but it'll be a great, it'll provide access to Oakland Mills and all for bicycles and people walking. I think it'll be great. And that's supposed to start in 2025. And Chris Singleton, he's the guy, he's a project manager on that. He says that have to finish the design. He says, but we have the money. It's a very expensive project, but they have the money, and it'll be really good.
So is that going to come out on the south side of Stevens Forest in Allview?
Yes.
Okay.
It comes right, but just on the other side, you take the bridge,
So that,
and there's a gate, and there's a little place where trucks go in, and
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's where. it
oh,
is.
good. So they've gotten over all the opposition over there?
Well,
as
the opposition's on the other half, and I do have something to talk
Oh,
to you
because I was
about
gonna
that.
ask, are they gonna connect it to the Patuxent Trail? Okay,
That's, and, well, let me just wrap up one more thing for you, but that's a great question, and it's like, you read my mind. But on, Stevens Forest Road, they're going to put in a multi-use, lane to connect, you know, part of Stevens Forest from Broken Land. There's no, bike lane for part of it, up to like, I think it's called parallel lane.
Mhm.
Okay, they're gonna put in a trail there, a multi-use path. So that'll connect that, and you can then. So it'll just make it more accessible.
do you know which side of Stevens Forest that'll be on?
It'll be on the, is that the east side?
I'm thinking it'll be
Yeah,
the
it's
east side.
yeah.
So I wonder, while they're doing that, if we can sort of strike while the iron's hot and get that crosswalk upgraded with signals and the paint that's missing.
I'm hoping.
It's gonna come right around there.
Yeah,
And like I noticed they've done that as part of the, because they've kind of done that by Owen Brown. They widened everything there and made kind of a multi-use path. And then they also did the one up at Dobbin, you know, by the Mission Barbecue. But while they were doing that, they also did new curb cuts and other upgrades. So I wonder if,
I don't know. I talked to.
if it's not in the plan, I wonder if we could get it worked in.
That's a good point. I did give the letter we wrote to Chris Jakarpu. When we talked about that last year, I gave it to him when I saw him at the open house. He asked some questions about it, so maybe that'll help. So about that, at the BAG meeting, Chris Singleton said that the problem with the Allview, for all of you who don't know, there's been major opposition from Allview about extending through the Allview area, connecting further up. What's the path called?
Is that the Patuxent Trail or?
Yes, it's a Patuxent
The one that
Trail.
runs
Thank
behind
you.
Carlinda, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, and he said there are people there's some of the homes there have built things on properties there, and they're the other ones that are complaining about it. And I'm like, and Christiana Rigby was there, and she said, and she asked me about it. Do you know about it at the meeting? And I said, I don't. Who is that a village or whatever? And she said, no, that's all Allview people. So we have people at Allview, and that land is CA land, which is ironic. So they are,
on CA land.
they have and I did go through one of those, and they have a basketball court on CA land. And they have also made it like a park. They've mowed the lawns, they've kept everything away. There's a small community. So he said, Chris Singleton says, I need CA to do something about that, or that they'll claim, oh, this is our, we use it now. It's that you've lost ownership. And that'll be a reason for them to stop that path. So I sent out a note. Judelle was here tonight. She sat in the back. And also Mr. Heath, Jason Heath. They're gonna go on a walk with me on March 15th. We're gonna walk along that area and take some pictures and see what's really going on.
CA shouldn't be losing its open space.
No.
What's that?
CA shouldn't be losing its open space.
You know what time your walk is yet?
It's at 1 o'clock on the 15th. So I walk part of it. You have to cross some streams. It's challenging. So wear boots, it's wet in places, but it was eye-opening to me. It'll be a nice property if we get that. Because the other option, he says, if we don't have that, if we can't get past the opposition of Allview, we'll have to have it go along very near Broken Land. We'll have to go up the hill, cross over to the light basically, and just take it up that way. It'll be a much less desirable solution.
I mean, it would be so nice to have it, because I've biked from Elkhorn to Savage Mill. So that, like, to have all that connected would be great.
Oh.
I mean, you can still do it, you're just crossing streets and everything, but to
Yeah.
have it all as a multi-use trail, it would be great.
It'll be amazing. It will just make coming out of downtown really exciting and give us access to it and access to like Savage that way. Just, I don't know, it's just, it'll be fun. Yeah, Judell, Jason and Brady Greer. I don't know him, but
That's her.
is it her? Cool. She's coming too.
Cool.
And any of you guys want to come? It's a challenging walk, but you want to do it. That's a Friday, I think. It's the Ides of March too.
It is the Ides of March.
So the next meeting will be here and on the April meeting for public space is I'm canceling it. I'm actually going away. So for most of April. I hope I can make the meetings here by Zoom, but we'll see. That's all I have.
Thanks, Warren.
So Warren, one question, I had the date as March 18th.
It could be.
That's what I put on the calendar.
Is that a Tuesday?
No, that's.
No, that's a Monday. So it's the Tuesday that you want?
Yeah, we're always on Tuesdays.
Okay, well, I messed up because I had written down the 18th when I talked to you
could've
on
said that.
Friday.
I could have said it wrong.
Okay, so, we'll make it work though, since I already told you, so we'll figure.
We'll figure it out.
When, no, it was that week, when Steven's person is.
Oh, yeah, they're already taken care of, yeah. Okay, I'll switch it, Warren. Sorry about that.
That's fine. We'll work it out.
Okay.
All right, let's go to the bulletin board.
I actually have stuff today.
Go for it.
So Earth Day event on election day. We are having the Yards Alive, music plant giveaway that day. School of Rock has a group that's gonna perform. And Howard County, or Howard Echo Works is gonna do a seed bomb workshop. And then we wanna talk to other organizations, including Warren, we need to talk to you maybe after the meeting. See if anybody else wants to get involved.
When is it?
It's April 20, is it 20th?
Mhm.
20th. It's election day, but we're gonna do yeah, but you're gone in April.
I'm going in April, yeah.
But if there's anybody from your organizations that wanna participate, so we'll.
All right,
talk to
I'll see. We have an event the 20th also.
It's a popular
you.
time.
Yes, it's
It
very
is.
good.
So I'm not there and we already have an event, but yeah, we can talk. I'll see what we can do.
The other thing I wanted to say is, my daughter Bethany, who's a senior over at Oakland Mills High School, she is in The Little Mermaid. And that is, I just had my calendar up, it's the second week in March, 7th, 8th, and 9th. Performances, they have a matinee on that Saturday on 9th, if you want to, I think tickets go on sale on Friday.
Yeah.
She's in the Princess Ensemble and then she's singing in the chorus for a couple of other things, so she'll be on stage at least for a little bit of it. So
If you do attend, you have to come to the cafeteria and buy popcorn for my daughter.
I will be volunteering front of house, so I'm in the building while she's there. That helps for moral support, so.
Really cool.
I actually had two things. One was, I don't know if you all received my email that, the hearing, the county executive's first
Yes.
residence hearing, I didn't say it right, but it's on March 7th.
Yes.
Yes, so just wanted to put that out there. And the other thing is, as far as election update, all candidate applications are due by 4 p.m. on this Friday, March 1st. So just wanted to reiterate that and put that back out there. 4 p.m., no exceptions.
So do we having an election so far?
I can't tell you until
Can't
Friday.
tell me till Friday?
That's right.
Is that the rules?
That's the rules.
Are
Them's
they,
the rules.
I'm looking for the, are they calling that the first, we already had the first resident hearing because we submitted something,
And
right? Or is this the second or am I confused about? what
no,
the-
I have to be confused because apparently I'm confused. about it.
I don't know what you call it. I know we got something that
Yeah, now I'm looking for
it
it.
was on the 7th, but I don't remember the title.
Here we go, residents. Oh, no, you just called it the residents budget hearing.
Right.
But it's probably the same. We already did the one. So
Okay,
I guess if we want, we could just resubmit what we did, but it should already be on record.
it should already be on record since we sent it
Okay.
directly to several people
Okay,
in his office.
okay.
I mean, it's up to you, but I'm saying it's definitely on.
No, no,
record.
I'm just thinking, I don't think we need a presence because I don't think this is, I think this is just the second iteration of these residence hearings. I don't
Okay.
think anything we're asking for has changed.
Nothing from bulletin board?
Nothing here, Lauren?
So, last week I went to John McCoy's, retirement, thing. That was really, I did not know all the things he did. It's just amazing. And I have one little story. I don't know if you guys remember, I used to have, my background was this picture of a house that had a fence along the stream and it was falling in and it was a mess. And I had it there and I left it up for a few weeks and John McCoy actually came to one of our meetings. And he didn't say anything at the meeting, but I saw him at a talk later. He goes, Warren, I'm working on that. So I don't know if you've seen it now. I took a picture the other day. I wish we have it. It's this amazing wall. And it'll never come down. It's great. And I think of that as the monument. John
McCoy Monument.
Nice.
McCoy's monument. It's just amazing. So.
He also erected one behind my house. Have you ever seen that one?
No.
That was, actually, that started before I was on the village board when he first came on. So my yard was falling in, that waterway I talked about that also goes behind Gatsby Green, that causes all kind of problems. There was about a 6-foot sheer drop at the corner of my yard. And I contacted CA about it. Literally his predecessor would come out and go, I don't see any erosion.
Yeah.
So when John came on, I guess it was Sandy encouraged me to try again. So he came out, he looked, he's like, well, I've never seen anything like this in Columbia. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, the corner of your foundation is 20 feet from where this is dropping off into the waterway. We need to do something. I said, thank you. I'm like, what is it you need to do? He goes, well, you could help me out. You could go to your resident, speak out at your village board. So this is definitely before I was on the village board. And he goes, there are surplus funds for another project that could be reallocated if the village board goes to CA and says, we support this.
Wow.
So I did.
And you got it.
And I mean, it took years and years. By the time the work started, I was on the village board because, you know, to the point that Jason made about all the different permitting they need to go through to offer a waterway all the way up to the federal. It took them years from then to get all the permits and everything to build that wall. But you know, the old saying where they don't make more land, they actually made more land. It's CA land, it's not my land, but now I have a nice CA buffer between my foundation and that 6-foot drop into the stream. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, besides that wall, he helped me with the rain garden. And he's done that all over Columbia, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I attended his Weed Warrior thing with Bob Marietta, and that's just amazing. And now they have like 14 or 15 a month where they just clean up the invasive species, and they just have all these people doing it. It's just, it's great. He's a treasure that he's two days a week for a while, but he'll be hard to replace.
Yeah. All right.
We got people.
Karina.
Oh, gosh, I'm so tired. Rebecca, I'm sorry. I forgot we didn't.
I was looking at you.
Oh, I don't have much. I changed 2 poopy diapers through the length of this meeting. So that's where I am these days. Little Mermaid is my favorite. So Amy, I hope to get out and see your daughter in that. And I am a weed warrior under John McCoy. He's made a big difference in my plant relationship, honestly. And even Saturday, I was at a weed warrior event down at Patriot Lane. I didn't do much because I had a baby in my arms, but I watched and I said, hey, you missed a vine over there. Don't forget that. So that was really helpful. But
well, and you're teaching them young.
oh no, it wasn't kids. I was ordering around.
No. I mean, the baby. You know.
Oh yes, she took note through her eyelids.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Shar?
I don't have any updates.
All right. Okay, now I think we're done, right? Are we done? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Night.
Bye, Sean, bye, Becca, bye, Ashley. Good night, Karina, thank you.
Karina, thank you. Thank you for
Thank
staying
you,
for the
Frank.
whole thing.
Yeah.
And for- Yeah.